my next guest, I've looked forward to meeting and discussing with for a very long time. His name is Joseph C. Okechukwu. He's a media consultant, a filmmaker, an actor, an author, an activist, and all-round matinee idol. Joseph, welcome to the mother of all talk shows. It's a great pleasure to meet you at last. As I said earlier, we have made something of a turn to Africa. My interview about Captain Traore has gone completely viral on all platforms. I hope that you have seen it, but if not, give us your view, in any case, your take on the importance of Captain Ibrahim Traore and the Sahelian group of presidents with Niger and Mali, and tell me what you think the importance of that for Africa as a whole might be.
So I would thank you first of all for having me, George. Finally, but yeah, I would use the words of one of my brothers who said that Ibrahim Traore is an archetype of revolution, a revolutionary archetype for the 21st century. And I agree and believe that with all my heart. You know, what you see happening in the Sahel is what should have happened in the 50s and 60s, because as far as I'm concerned, what happened in those 50s and 60s when we were told we had independence was basically just charades. It meant nothing because you have a country like France signing something very sinister like the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization with all the 14 French colonies in Africa that implied they had to pay the foreign reserve to Banque de France in Paris, and then 85% of it paid, and they were left with 15%, and then they had to go borrow from their own money at a very high interest rate. And so Africans have always had this feeling of being caged in their own skin. We've always had this feeling of still being colonized because we don't get any benefit of an independent nation, you know, from any African country. And then we started seeing all these truths and being revealed. And then all of a sudden you see an African country that suddenly shows up, you know, in the Sahel. You see people like Ibrahim Traore doing some of those things that you can't find other African countries doing. Ibrahim Traore showed up on the scene and now had the audacity to say, look, we are going to nationalize our oil, our gold mines. We are going to do this and do that and do that. And people are like, whoa, these are the kind of things that get you killed. Okay. And then he's doing it and he's getting away with all these things. And so when General Langley did what he did, because Ibrahim Traore has been there since 2022. But remember that the firestorm you see on social media today started when Langley went there to the Congress, and then he was saying that this guy is using the money he's making from gold to protect himself and not to better the life of the people. And then Africans were like, whoa, we've been here before, deja vu. They called the dog a bad name because they want to kill the dog. So we're not going to stay alive and let this happen again, because this is exactly what played out when they took Muammar Gaddafi out. That's when Africans rose up and said, never, ever, ever again. We would not allow this to happen on the continent of Africa. So in a nutshell, what you see happening in the Sahel is the true reflection of what African independence should look like. Independent nations that actually can decide, okay, how they want their destiny to look, what they want their nation to look like, who they want to go into partnership with, you know, and nobody will be able to tell them, no, you can't do that. No, nothing like right of first refusal or anything. They are totally and completely in charge. So in a nutshell, that's what I think is going on in Burkina Faso, and why I believe everybody is right here today to support them.
Well, it's a very beautiful nutshell, if nutshell it be. a succulent picture that you paint and that I paint and Nico House painted just the other night on the mother of all talk shows. This is a government which has decreed that all education will be free from the kindergarten to the university. This is a country that has nationalized its main mineral assets, its precious minerals, principally gold. And the people who used to own Burkina Faso, foreigners who used to own it, are determined not to let it go quietly, aren't they? And you used a very memorable phrase that this is the kind of thing that gets you killed. Well, it got lots of people killed. It got Thomas Sankara killed. It got Patrice Lumumba killed. It got Chris Hani killed. Therefore, the question is, are they going to be able to kill Captain Traore? When I see the crowds outside his presidential headquarters saying, you'll have to kill us first, I'm filled with joy and pride at that. How do you think the rest of Africa feels about that?
Okay, so I'll tell you this, George. It is not, okay, so I love the fact that the crowd gathered around his place and they say, no, you have to kill us before you kill him. But that's not even the protection that Ibrahim has. Okay, that's a good one. And I love it because in the last few weeks, I have been getting some information from sources I trust that a lot of Africans have been trooping into Burkina Faso, asking to be shown what to do to be able to stand and fight alongside Ibrahim Traore. So Burkina Faso is no longer a Sahelian thing. It's not an African revolution movement. That's what you see going on there. But here's why I believe they are not going to succeed this time with Ibrahim Traore. I was explaining this to a South African news network a few days ago. I said, you see, no matter how you feel about your Africanness, we have already been crippled from the start. We are starting from a place of weakness on a race for life. Everybody is about to run, but we are crippled. We're running with one leg, one foot, and the rest of the people have their pair on the mark, ready to go. And then you give a gunshot and we start running on one foot, and the rest are running on the pair. This is what has happened to Africa all along. And I've been saying to people that as much as we want to feel so good about ourselves, as much as it makes for a really good sensual indulgence to think that, yeah, we can stand on our own, you really can't. We need a superpower that can say, I am going to align with you guys, okay? I really have some sort of enmity between me and your real enemy, which is the colonial powers. And if I can align with you, I can help you to decouple from the colonial powers. That has been my prayer for so many years, George. And that happened recently between Russia and the West, because the West kept going to Russia. You remember, of course, I've seen your show and I've talked about this for so many years about what happened between Russia and Ukraine, how that so many people are ignorant of what really went down, how that you told someone, I am not going to move 1 inch east, and then all of a sudden you've taken almost all the countries that were there that belong to that east. And now you expect the guy to be happy when you have come now right to his border, and then you think he's going to be okay. So when Russia saw all of that, Russia already knew and knows that the biggest thing you can, the worst thing you can ever do to the colonial West is to take away the feeding bottle of the Africans, of African wealth from their mouth. And so Russia decided, you know what, maybe this is just time for me to start helping these guys to decouple from the colonial West. And that's exactly what happened. France has been getting our African countries. George, if you have time, I'll tell you this now. There was a news article that came out in 2017 by a German newspaper. According to that news article, they gained access to an information which they published verbatim about 440 billion euros, or maybe 500, was being paid to France every single year by African countries. I'm talking 14 French colonies in Africa. 14 colonies paying this to France every single year. And that's why Jacques Chirac, the former president of France, said, and I quote, he said, we have to be honest and acknowledge that the big part of the money in our banks comes precisely from the exploitation of the African continent. And in 2008, he followed it up with this. He said, without Africa, France will slide down in the rank of a third world power. This is buttressing the fact that without Africa, the colonial West is going to be in a big mess, especially France, which I regard as the worst of all the colonial powers in the world. So when Russia showed up, guess where it started from? It was from the Sahel, one of the French colonies, and that was Mali. And then after Mali, it was Burkina Faso. And then after Burkina Faso, it was Niger. And now let me break it down to the level people can understand. Let me tell you what really happened. So as these things are happening, Russia is providing logistics to make all this transformation happen. The true independence we're having in Africa today is all in the Sahel. And after that, Russia now goes into a security agreement with them. And when you come into a security pact or agreement with Russia, it simply means that when you get attacked, Russia is going to have to do something about that. So whoever is coming to attack you must take into cognizance the fact that Russia is on ground. And so you are attacking them, you are also attacking Russia. And Russia will bring their full military might in response to whatever attack you mete out to these countries. In between 2023 and 2024, Russia sent about 100 boots on ground after sending a bunch of military weapons, hardware, and stuff like that to Burkina Faso. And guess what? When the Kursk incursion, which I call Ukrainian misadventure, that was meant to distract Russia from its mission in Africa, when that happened, Russia had to cut down on the number of troops that were in Burkina Faso and quickly send them to Kursk. And which means that whatever the West did through Ukraine worked by distracting Russia. So they took some of the guys to Kursk to go and fight alongside the North Koreans and the other guys who were fighting to rescue that country and at the or that region. So at the end of the day, they had now fewer troops, Russian troops on ground that are there to protect Ibrahim Traore. That is apart from the guys that are very close to him in his protection. Guess what? At the end of the day, the mission of this troop, 100 troops that Russia sent, was not only just to provide security from terrorism in the country. They were also meant to train the Burkinabe soldiers. So thankfully, a lot of soldiers have been trained in intelligence, in counterintelligence or counterinsurgency and all kinds of stuff. And those ones were able to work with the little contingent that Russia had on ground to be able to foil all the many numerous assassination attempts that I'm pretty sure you must have heard of, George, against this young man.
Sure.
In the past, this kind of thing never goes on. There's no way you will be an Ibrahim Traore in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and you will still be alive by this time. It is because the game is now being played differently. And so being able to catch him and kill him is going to be an uphill task for the colonial powers that be today.
Well, on Wednesday, I'll be in Moscow, and I'll be at the Victory Parade in Moscow on the 9th. And one of the guests of honor there, with President Xi Jinping, for example, and many others, will be Captain Traore. I hope very much to get a chance to talk to him. I've got to tell you that long ago, I used to frequently be in the frontline states in the fight against apartheid in South Africa, alongside the African National Congress, as was then. And President Putin was also there. He knows Africa. He was on the front line. I have a great picture of him with the hero leader Samora Machel, the leader of the Mozambican liberation movement, Frelimo. I am certain that Putin is more seized than any other Russian leader has ever been about the importance of Africa. One last question, Joseph, if I may. There are many derelict leaders of African countries. Let me just pick the Aunt Sally, the president of Cameroon, who's been the president for 40 years, who is a walking zombie, a corpse. who lives in France, comes back for his rigged elections. The days of that kind of government, if I can call it a government, must be numbered now that Africans can see what a real leader looks like in Captain Traore.
Thank you so much, George, for this question. Brilliant question. And this takes me to why what is happening with Burkina Faso, Traore, and the Sahel is very, very, very critical and very important. You see, there's a psychological dimension. There's a psychological element to this. The psychological element is that if Africans continue to see what Ibrahim Traore is doing, first of all, let's start from Mali. So the psychological element played a lot of roles in what happened in Mali. When Mali broke with the colonial powers, everybody expected that they were going to Goita, Assimi Goita was going to be taken out of the way within just a matter of weeks or 1 month, because this is what we're used to. Psychologically, we have resigned to that fate, and that didn't happen. And so the boldness for Burkina Faso to happen was there, and so Burkina Faso happened. And when that happened and nothing happened, Niger Republic also happened. You see what is going on. Now, let's come to the economic dimension. The economic dimension is that Africans are now beginning to look at what is going on there. These countries, especially Niger, Burkina Faso, we were told were the poorest in the world. All of a sudden, we're hearing and seeing the economic index coming out from these places. They are looking so good. Now, the population in all the other African countries are suddenly going to begin to wonder, why is it that these people with the meager natural resources they have are able to do so much, and you guys are here telling us stories every day, sending pundits to television and radio stations to come and tell us why we should be as poor as we are today? Look, for instance, what the guy you mentioned in Cameroon, 42 years, George, 42 years in power, 42 years. And the French love him so much. In fact, the guy stays in France while elections happen, what they call elections, happen in Cameroon. So he is meant to stay there until he dies, just like Yadema died in power and his son took over. I'm pretty sure they probably have a son, a crackhead son somewhere, who is going to take over from him the moment he dies. This is what the French is showing Africans today. So African country presidents are so uncomfortable as we speak now. This thing that is happening in the Sahel unsettles them greatly. So even they themselves wish for Ibrahim Traore to be defeated more than the colonial powers wish him to be defeated. They are not genuinely in love with what is happening there. It is the African population that are so, completely happy and blown away by what is going on and fully in support of it. Because these presidents, Sahel states are making them look like fools. The Sahel states now is beginning to make them look like liars, because all the lies they've been telling, for instance, look at Ibrahim Traore. Under his presidential initiative on agriculture, do you know what this young man has done? This guy has brought a lot of innovation into agriculture. If you see, he introduced the cotton production. Burkina Faso used to be the biggest cotton producer in the whole of Africa. They went down to number 2. Today, they are racing up to that same number 1 because of the initiative. George, let me tell you, you may not know this, but you need to know this now. Ibrahim Traore has committed to build at least 5,000 kilometers of paved road every year. But guess what? Until the 2022, when he took over power, Burkina Faso had only 3,600 kilometers of paved road. 3,600 for such a nation with all the wealth, the gold, the cotton, and everything they have. Only 3,600. This young man is now building 5,000 every year, and he has his nation's population, the youths, engaged in this project. So, in a nutshell, whether a nutshell or no nutshell, let me explain to you in summary. The guys that you call presidents across Africa are very, very scared, because if what is going on in Burkina Faso and the Sahel states in Niger Republic is going to continue, where Ibrahim Traore takes over 2 gold mines and nationalizes them, Gold mine that were supposed to be sold for $300 million, he got for $80 million, nationalized it, and now the wealth is going to now stay with the people rather than go to the corporations and then to all the other colonial powers. If he does that, the same way that Niger has also taken a uranium mine and nationalized it, you see that more money is going to be going into their coffers. And these small countries will suddenly begin to make a nation like Nigeria that claims to be giant look like an ant. This is what they are so scared of, and it is going to happen because we are seeing the result right now. I'm telling you that these guys are very, very, very uncomfortable, and we could care less. All we want is let Africa be free. Let's come into an equal agreement. If you want to have business with me, discuss with me. Look at the guy called Yahya Jammeh, the former president of Gambia. I have a real life video because there's a video I put out in 2019 on my YouTube channel, Joseph Okechukwu. It is called the Gang of 1884. If you look at that video, I have a real life video testimony from Yahya Jammeh talking about why they removed him from power. George, these guys were promising him that the petroleum and all the gold and everything in his country, that they were about to take it over and mine it, and that he was going to be given 5% royalty from it. 5%. And the guy was like, are you crazy? And they told him, Mr. President, you should be happy we are offering you 5% because there are not more than 3 African countries that actually get more than 3% royalty. And I can tell you Nigeria is probably one of them. You can imagine, how can you have natural resources, minerals, oil that give you multiples of trillions of dollars, and you give the owner nations only 3% and 5% is the max. And that's what they offered him. And when he said no, they kicked him out. Qatar today, George, has only natural gas. Natural gas in Qatar is what they've used to turn that place into a living heaven on earth. But in Imo State alone in Nigeria, if you know the amount of gas deposit in Imo State, not the only state, in Imo State, that's apart from oil, which we are 5th largest exporter of. If you know the amount there, you'll be wondering, why are we living the way we are living? It is because of these lopsided, satanic colonial agreements that have left Africa pauperized forever. We have come to a point where something has shifted in the atmosphere. There is a massive shift in consciousness, and it is both historic and generational. So we are taking advantage of it and saying enough is enough. Africa must be for Africa. And if you want to do business, we don't want to exist alone. We don't want to be just only for Africa. There's no way Africa can exist alone. We need partners in the West. We need partners in Europe, in America. But we want to have equal agreement, a gentlemanly partnership that says, you take 40, I take 60 because I'm bringing the hardware and all of this, or you take 30, I take 70, that kind of stuff. And not to be giving us royalties of 0.3 and 0.1 like the wife of the president of Sierra Leone was complaining about the other day. The woman said, look, these people are giving us 0.00001. That's why Sierra Leone is like a dump ground. 0.0001. So you make 1 trillion and the country gets about $100,000 or maybe $1 million out of their natural resources. They have one of the largest deposits of gold in the whole of West Africa. This is the wife of a sitting president saying it, not just Joseph Okechukwu. We have come to that point where things are either done right or they are not done at all. And Africans have had it. They are even ready for war now, as long as they reclaim their stolen sovereignty. Sorry for taking too much of your time.
Joseph, I told them you were a star, and you definitely proved me right. Captain Traore, the threat of a good example. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. That's an interview that will run and run for a long time to come. On the line from England, Corby, is our old friend Terence. Welcome, Terry. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. It's lovely to see 2 academics talking across the room there. One an activist academic, your good self, and obviously the eminent Professor Morandi. The second point is Mr. Okechukwu there was fantastic. I've been liaising with a couple of young kids in the Ogun region in Nigeria for years. Oh yeah, he was and is. And I've been liaising with a couple of kids, I can't say who, and they're active in the Ogun region in Nigeria. And I believe that Niger is a start. We may not have an African Union coming about a bit, but I tell you something, the kids are getting restless. They can see how they screwed. And that man is almost like a mad Welshman, the way he was going off, all factual. I really, really enjoyed it. I just hope that it is a movement of organised for African unity. What say you on that count, Mr. Galloway?
Oh, brilliant. Joseph definitely could out-talk even a Welshman, but it was a torrent of fact and a torrent of wisdom. And I think we're all the better for it. I feel totally refreshed. I don't think I'll see African unity in my lifetime, and I'm not sure you will either, Terence. But I think my children will, because a United States of Africa has so much to commend it. It would provide an ability to negotiate with the world to get a fair price. You talked about Niger there. They produce uranium. They used to get 80 cents a kilogram, 80 cents per kilogram of uranium of such value from France. When they nationalized it, they were able to command 300 euros because that's what France was selling the uranium for. So they knew the world price because France was getting it. 300 euros a kilogram for a vital resource that they paid Niger 80 cents per kilogram for. No African worth their salt is going to settle for that indefinitely. And I think that a spark has been lit in the Sahel that will spread throughout Africa. I'm sure of that.